if we think the whole AI automated robot economy to its logical conclusion, the only non-scalable and truly scarce resources in the future are going to be one, Bitcoin, second, physical land, and third, human attention. These are the only three things that are worth competing over, with basically an infinite willingness to...
We will see another fart coin this cycle.
ETH on the forefront a little bit more compared to the last couple of months. ETH going to 10K, I would be very surprised about that.
Money is fake, teeth are fake. I lost a tooth on the weekend by biting into a cob on the corn. So I got to get that fixed. A little bit of downtime, just like Solana.
Anything regarding consumer, like without hesitation, answer would be Solana.
There aren't that many great comeback stories in crypto compared to Solana between 2022 and 2024.
You do not have any other way to outgrow inflation than by allocating into risk assets.
All right, this is the last recorded episode. I think from next time we're gonna start live streaming. So just as a framer for the beginning of the conversation, how's everyone?
Tremendous. Still enjoying my time here in Lisbon, and markets look good, and yeah, just a lovely time to be in the space. What about you, Max?
Doing all right. Portfolio's red, shirt is red, money is fake, teeth are fake. I lost a tooth on the weekend by biting into a cob on the corn. So I got to get that fixed. A little bit of downtime, just like Solana.
Nice. What do you have today? What's interesting?
Is Solana on the brink of a meaning crisis? I think the trenches are down bad and the participants are very desperate. So I've seen it rumored around between the lines of some posts where people have been wondering, well, is Solana now facing what ETH has been dealing with over the past 12 to 18 months, like this crisis of lacking direction, lacking orientation? What's our resident trencher having to say about that?
I have a lot to say, but that's not what I'm hearing at all. The only thing I'm hearing is Solana the scam extraction chain? I don't see much similarity between Solana and Ethereum being drawn, but I see a lot of like arguments along the lines of, hey, like Solana has been max extract, pump fund extracted, Libra extracted, KOLs extracted, tier 3 celebrities extracted, and everyone just like exit scammed and extracted. Cupsy is extracting daily. The chain is doomed because the whole narrative is extraction. That's what I've been hearing. I have not heard that it falls into the same, or like it has the same pitfalls as Ethereum. But I would like to take a step back. Like, why do you think Solana trenches are cooked? I can comment on that.
Well, I think the token launch meta has peaked. It's mostly a zero-sum game between Jupiter, between Bonk and Pump.fun. I mean, they're all positioned slightly differently, but essentially they are competing over the same user base and over the same capital flows. I do not think that there will not be new token launches. Like, don't get me wrong on that, but the times of launching 10,000 tokens a day and 1,000 of them graduating the bonding curve, I think, is over. Participants have realized that these are extremely short holding times and short-term minded games. And I don't think anybody wants to play that anymore. There's no serious capital moving into this. Everybody who's now entering the industry who has a sizable amount of capital to deploy is not deploying it into like a 30-minute-old meme coin, unless it's one that is precisely reflecting the cultural meta of that current time. But there's maybe a handful or 10 coins in a week that are culturally relevant that can be launched. So I think this meta has peaked. And if you look at the communication of Toli, the Solana co-founder, I think he's also realizing that doubling down on meme coins is not the path to go forward if Solana wants to play a major role in the serious chains ecosystem. So these are the kind of indicative trends I'm seeing right now, which are somewhat similar to what we've seen in Ethereum, because the ETH user base doesn't really didn't really know what to center their chain around a year ago. And the ETH leadership, both Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation, were also not really, do we want to be opinionated? Do we want to explicitly support? Do we want to oppose what is happening on our chains? And it's, again, like not 100% the same, but I think there are very similar trends going on in Solana right now.
May I add something to that?
Sure.
So I actually disagree with this panic a little bit, because if we look at the numbers, there's like a very nice dashboard on Blockworks, by the way, about launches that happen on Solana. And I mean, we saw like a peak during May, like a huge spike, but now we are in the season of summer, and summer tends to be like a more quiet month anyway. And we still see a bunch of launchers in the Solana ecosystem. For example, in late July, beginning of August, it's a little bit slower, but I think that's nothing unusual, because if I would be in a position to launch something, I would never ever launch something like that in August. I would wait for September or something like that. So I think let's get back to this in like October or something. But I don't see it as like a huge downturn. And also TVL just experienced a small downturn, but also picked up again. So I think actually that Solana is in a very strong position. It's actually for me a sign that the ecosystem somewhat matures. So I would see it a little bit differently. And I think Ethereum, because you drew this example, was an ecosystem without a plan, without like a symbol, without anything moving forward. There were some ideas about restaking, but everyone was like decentralized in a certain sense. And I don't see it on Solana. I still see Solana as the ecosystem. If like an ecosystem is able to attract retail, and that's like super hard right now, then it's Solana. So I understand that the trend has slowed down, but I don't see that there's like a reason to panic. No.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's any reason to panic. I mean, 2024 has clearly demonstrated that Solana is one of the big players at the table, but I do think it's realistic to expect that they will face some growing pains, just as Ethereum has faced them over the past 2 years. And Solana has sort of speed run this entire playbook ever since the last cycle. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if for the next 6 to 12 months they're kind of messing around a bit here and there. Probably the times of Solana outperformance, at least of like clear asymmetry versus BTC and ETH, are over, temporary. I'm not saying that this cannot return in the long term, but right now it seems like there are no new trenches participants coming in. And in terms of DeFi, Solana isn't offering a lot of new primitives versus Ethereum. It is still like, I'm not saying the DeFi ecosystem in Solana is bad. I mean, they have nice applications with good UX, good UI, but all the innovation right now is still happening in the EVM-based chains. Base is catching up a little bit to Solana in terms of appealing to retail with the whole Zora content creator coins meta and all of that stuff. It's I would expect it to be as short-lived as meme coins were. And I don't think that meme coins will disappear entirely, but I think the hype of launching 30K, 40K, 50K coins a day, that is about to be over, or at least it's not going to attract a lot of attention anymore going forward. So I do think that Solana has to kind of reorient itself and clearly reflect and outline what guiding principles they want to employ going forward.
Okay, so I think there's lots to unpack there. So I agree. I think the meta of launching 50,000 tokens a day is not sustainable. That's very agreeable. Base is still a forced, constructed narrative. I think Zora will have zero relevance in a few days or weeks from now. It's an interesting experiment. I would completely disagree that most of the innovation is happening on EVM chains or Ethereum mainnet. I think there's more innovation happening on Solana right now.
What innovation is happening on Solana right now?
I'll just give you one example. There's a lot of tokens that launched that are stuck with a token. I've seen a couple projects that try to like migrate an existing token to something new, like transform something existing with a community, with a token, and like give them the opportunity to fix it by have like a migration relaunch type of thing. Like that's something very needed in my mind, because you don't want to a point, like you don't want to keep launching new things. You want to fix old things also. And there's more examples. I've seen a lot of like game like things on Solana where people try to like create bundles of narratives and things like that. Like in general, I see, and it makes sense because Solana is the cheaper chain. Like on Solana, it's much cheaper to experiment, just with regards to fees on chain. So I'm seeing a lot of experiments. Something like DAOs.fun also started on Solana and then it was copied on Base. So I don't know. I wouldn't agree with. I mean, maybe it is true for DeFi. I don't have as much insight into DeFi, but when it comes to like consumer degen tech, I would definitely disagree. And then the last point, I mean, Ethereum plays a different game. Like, Ethereum is an established, almost Bitcoin like dinosaur ecosystem that just has to survive. And I feel like Solana is still playing like a different growth game. So in my mind, they're very different environments.
Yeah, also to add to that, I don't really see, just to get this comparison a little bit out of the way, I don't see a reason to compare Solana with Base too much. I think Solana has a much bigger track record. It has double the amount of users. It has double the amount of TVL. And as you said, Onur, it also feels a little bit forced what they try to do here. The developments that we have seen in the Solana ecosystem, specifically after the huge meltdown after the FTX collapse in 2022, has been tremendous. Like there aren't that many great comeback stories in crypto compared to Solana between 2022 and 2024. So I think Solana is on a very good track, and also there are tremendous protocols in the Solana ecosystem, also in DeFi. One, of course, is Radium. We also have Camino Finance. I think it tenfolded its TVL throughout the year. So yeah, I think Solana is still a great place also for DeFi activities. And I still didn't get it. Maybe you guys are a little bit more informed about this, but with Solexi, they're also trying to build out this layer 2 landscape slowly. So yeah, but not too informed about that, to be honest.
The note of competing for the same user, or like the comparability of Base and Solana, I do think that they have much more overlap than, for example, ETH Layer 1 and Solana have, because they're both cheap chains and they're both trying to target more of the retail user and like these everyday integrations of crypto into everyday life. Maybe Solana for now is a little more on the speculation and mimetic side, and Base is more on, okay, crypto credit cards via Coinbase, and like now trying to enter the whole social and kind of culture coin meta too. I'm not saying that Base is going to sustainably outperform Solana on these metrics, but I do find them very comparable. And what we have seen over the last weeks, which will be a dominating trend going forward, in my opinion, is that the whole who owns the distribution, who owns the user, is becoming much more relevant if you want to optimize for user quantity. And that is something that both Base and Solana have a very strong interest in. ETH layer 1 is definitely optimizing for quality users. If you look at the DeFi applications there, I mean, if you have a 10K portfolio, it doesn't make sense to play around with this stuff because it's mostly optimized for stablecoin yields. You still have to pay comparably high gas fees, even though the gas fees are tremendously lower than compared to last cycle. But it's still like if you're playing around with small sums of capital, it's still going to eat into your returns. If you look at who's really owning the user relationship right now, it is Rabi Wallet in the EVM ecosystem. It is Solana Wallet in Phantom Wallet in the Solana ecosystem. And yeah, then you move down one layer into the trading terminals, Axiom right now. And Axiom is not, it is not Solana only. They also offer hyperliquid stuff. When Phantom started to offer perps, it didn't tap into Drift or didn't tap into Jupiter. It tapped into hyperliquid. So, like the Solana maximalism or ETH maximalism, this stuff is going to fade into the background more and more, and it becomes more relevant. Okay, which one of these infrastructures and which one of these chains and applications can you tap into to guarantee your user the best experience. And the front end and the distribution and the like ownership of the end user is going to matter much more going forward. And that's also why I think that Base, even though it comes across as a forced narrative here and there, is positioned quite well, because
Wait,
it probably has 100 million users, and Base is the de facto chain they can push onto their existing user base. So Base does have good distribution.
but Phantom Wallet also didn't launch their perps integration on Base or on Ethereum. Just
No,
like
but
you said, they launched it on Hyperliquid, which makes perfect sense. Hyperliquid is the number one perps venue in crypto in the world, with a market share of, I don't know, 90% plus, I guess, or 80% or something. So it makes perfect sense. They didn't launch on DYDX. They didn't launch anywhere else. They launched on Hyperliquid. But that's like, how does that invalidate Solana? Like, I don't understand that conclusion, basically. Like, it is a known fact that Solana doesn't have a strong perps product. That's nothing new. But I don't think that has been Solana's edge ever. Solana's edge has been experimental, community-based, meme-like projects that are bootstrapped, basically. Plus, some sort of like small games or meme-related tokens, or like let's say like fast trade related tokens products such as Axiom or Photon. So I hear you, I agree with you, but again, I don't draw the same conclusion. Like, they just launched where it's best, and for perps, that's Hyperliquid. I fully agree with that.
no, I mean, it does not invalidate Solana, or it's not a mid to long term Solana bear thesis, but it exposes that Solana is unable to rely solely on meme coins going forward. And you see their leadership trying to pivot away from meme coins. If you look at the tweets of Toli over the last week or two, and on the other hand, they do not have a DeFi ecosystem that is robust enough to attract a large user base. And it is just becoming very apparent that the chain backend is not the deciding factor anymore in making a decision where you want to like accrue value. Value accrual is shifting more and more towards the front end, who owns the distribution. And Phantom Wallet not deciding to opt for Drift or Jupiter, I do not think that the Solana Foundation was very happy to hear about that, because now they have a much higher burden of responsibility to make their chain in isolation attractive again. And I mean, the same burden is on the ETH Foundation to not only be like this unopinionated, decentralized, neutral, whatever infrastructure provider. They have to actively grow their community and actively grow their outreach. They cannot rely on applications to stay loyal to their chain, because they obviously do not. And these applications and these front ends, they do not have any incentive to do so, because they can capture most of the value. So they shouldn't be infrastructure maximalists. They should be value capture maximalists.
But is this news? Like, for me, this is like basically like a couple of things that were discussed here is common sense for me since like 2 or 3 years. One, that chain maximalism is dying out. I think this was like something that we all agreed on in 2021 already, that the Ethereum main chain plays a completely different game and just needs to survive, as Ono mentioned it previously. Is also, I think, common sense, and that each chain needs to have its own ecosystem growth strategy and like a native growth besides relying on new applications coming to the space, I think should also be clear. So, I mean, otherwise it would be too easy. I mean, every single company in the world that was in Web2 before, encountered the same issues and also needs to rely on its own growth.
I think it's definitely not either or. It's definitely a multi-chain world. But like, let's look at like what either ecosystem is trying to do here. Coinbase is mainly an exchange, and they are more and more moving into consumer. They have a wallet, they have a layer 2, if you want to call it that. And the next thing for them is going to be a path towards Coinbase listing is going to go through Base, in my opinion. Like, you have to engage in their ecosystem. You have to like maybe get integrated into their wallet first, and then there's a path towards listing. That's their growth hack to make their ecosystem big. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a strategy or a tactic that is, I guess, like a valid business strategy. However, anyone doing that is interested in strategically aligning with Coinbase, right? And I think, especially on the meme coin degen side, that's not the first thing that people care about. The first thing that people care about is like doing something fun with their friends. And my main thesis is, if you are bullish on doing something fun with your friends on weekends and hackathons, that is 99% gonna happen on Solana and rarely gonna happen on other ecosystems. Just because like Solana is just the cheapest, there's where all the fun happens on Solana. However, if you're making a plan and you want to align with Coinbase and you have a kind of vision on being active on an ecosystem, perfectly viable path, but it's a different type of project, not in any form judging the quality of the project. And similarly, I think you can draw different conclusions when you see other projects building on Ethereum or building on Ton or building an Avalanche. Like, to me, any project that isn't building on Solana, there is an aspect of strategic alignment with the other ecosystem, and you're giving up a little bit retail access for that. I would argue that most retail access is Phantom Wallet these days, and it's best integrated with Solana. It's fastest, it's cheapest, it's the most convenient. Yeah, that's my main thesis. Like, and you know, if I've been advising teams for over 6 years now, and if they would ask me like, hey, where should I build my product, where should I try my product, obviously, like, it depends on the type of project, what they're doing. If they're doing something highly capital intensive that is DeFi related, Solana may not be the best choice. It may also be, but anything regarding consumer, like, without hesitation, answer would be Solana.
The point I was trying to make is that it is going to matter less going forward what chain you are associating yourself with. Like, these lock-in effects into one chain ecosystems are like dying down. Not completely, but they're shrinking compared to what they have been before. Because it is now it's becoming much easier to either just abstract your front end and be multi-chain from day one, or later integrate other chains, and the user is not even going to notice anything. People are getting less opinionated about different chains. The whole like alt L1 thing, where you were like an Avalanche maximalist or like a Phantom, now Sonic maximalist, these days are over. So people are finally understanding, and applications are finally understanding, that chains are just infrastructure and chains are not a cult. And I do think that is only going to decline further in the future.
But your initial thesis sounded a bit different. Your initial thesis was more along the lines of, is Solana on the decline? And my answer to that is, you're absolutely right. Whatever chain or execution environment we're talking about, it will matter less and less. And I think the technologies that enable that are more the privies of the world than anything, right? So I think like it's wallet adjacent technologies that will enable abstracting chains more than anything.
I was not saying that Solana is going to be on a decline for the next 12 to 18 months, but I think it is realistic that the growth of the ecosystem, or like the community tightness, is going to be stalling for a little bit of time, because we are seeing the early phases of that right now, because there's a unclear alignment what Solana wants to be centered around, if it's meme coins only or meme coin centric, or if it's like deepen, DeFi, whatever else.
That's a very different thing. So a stalling ecosystem is very different from losing market share to Ethereum or Base, for example. And my sense in your initial statement was that you framed it more so like, is Solana losing market share a little bit to Base and other places?
Well, in the short term, that very well could be, and I don't think that would be problematic in the mid to long run. I mean, if you look at 2024, when all the meme coin stuff was popping up on Solana, like Solana probably had 90% of mindshare and relevant activity going on, and ETH did not. That didn't stop the teams who were already building on ETH in the DeFi or whatever space to stop building and suddenly all pivot to Solana. Like that is not going to automatically happen. And I don't think that will happen vice versa.
But Ethereum is not base. Ethereum was there before Solana. Ethereum is the more mature ecosystem.
Yeah, but I'm talking about 2024. And I mean, Solana was not like Solana is not like Bera chain, which just came out in 2024 and like launched its chain in 2025.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, for a project to build on Ethereum, very valid thing. It's one of the main chains. I think it's great, but it really depends. It really depends on the type of project, in my opinion.
What's your guys' take on the whole social and culture coin meta on Zora right now? Not maybe limited to Zora, but in general.
Quite bearish. So what I'm bullish on generally is that crypto enables token first approaches. You don't have to have everything figured out. There is a token which plays a different, like a relevant role in the whole equation, but that's very acceptable. But the way Zora has done it, I've used their product for maybe just a few minutes, and the way the assets have performed, it's just a horrible look in my opinion. Like I don't see this working at all. I'm a strong believer in you have to meet the users where they are and not move them away from where they are. And I feel like any type of product, SocialFi with tokens, has to happen where the users are today. And for crypto, that's mainly X. So, you know, I would love to welcome and see solutions where I can stream on X and I don't have to like stream somewhere else for it to work with the platform or whatever. I feel like it, like anything that feels unnatural and constructed when it comes to user behavior, I'm very skeptical about. So there's something there. I don't think Zora is it. Zora, I feel like will be like another tribe.run. It will disappear in a couple weeks.
Oh, in a couple of weeks already.
I'm quite skeptical in general when it comes to these things. I also think attention span gets shorter and shorter. What Zora needs to do is, so if Zora wants to stay relevant, the state of the trenches and of crypto is basically as follows. They have to crime a runner, and once they have a runner that hits 50, 100 million market cap, they're going to stay relevant for maybe a few months. That's quite expensive, and it's also not easy, and it's probably also illegal. But I feel like the way they've like, do you remember Blast and Fantasy.top? Like those products had way more traction and interest on crypto Twitter, and they all died. And I feel like Zora doesn't even have that amount of relevance, and it's a pretty boring product in my opinion. I don't know, like I wasn't excited. I don't want to hate on them, like anyone who builds fair game. I just didn't like the product.
Yeah, I mean, actually, do you by chance still know the platform called what was it? Epix or Eppen? They were like super, super early social media product in 2019 they came out or something like that. And yeah, I think they launched on the Telos blockchain, if you still remember that. And actually, I'm a little shocked because when I went through Zora for the first time, it's basically what these guys have built like 5 to 6 years ago. Just with a minor different design, but there isn't like a big change. And I also think that you also need to convince the newer generation, like really the full generation X, to also use it, right? Right. Sorry, Generation Z. And
Yeah,
I think that's like an old Instagram copy paste, more or less. That would have been super cool in 2015.
I mean, I think I would agree on a couple things here. I would agree on hyper financialization, and I would agree on capturing monetary value of attention and relevance of content, let's say. Like those are very agreeable concepts. I'm not sure I would go as far as every post has to be a token or something like that. Like I feel like it's very counterintuitive. Like even if you build a following in social media, you do it around a single brand, which is your personal brand. So if at all, the idea of a canonical token that accrues value makes much more sense than every post token. I haven't looked into the implementation detail. Maybe they've abstracted it away so much that it doesn't really matter. But again, directionally capturing monetary value of attention and relevance, I think makes sense. I fully agree with your statement. Like it's basically a super simple Instagram what they've built, and I'm not sure how it will play out, but I'm not too bullish. They
If
use
we
Privy
see
though.
if we see any social media like innovation in crypto, I do not think that the innovative part is going to be on the social layer. It is going to be on the economic and financialization layer. And if we are generally aligned with the thesis of, okay, everything is going to get financialized, then sooner or later, we will either see crypto infrastructure integrations into existing social media, or we will see crypto native social media. And I think the latter is likely, because I mean, there have always been new social platforms over the past couple of years. Some of them have been more sticky, others have not. I'm not saying that like Instagram is going to get dethroned by some Zora like app within the next 1 to 2 years, not implying that at all. But I would not discount the probability of at least some stickiness to zero. I think that would be financially irresponsible in terms of taking bets.
But
What
I
I
mean,
yeah,
that's I don't believe that, to be honest with you. Like having looked into the rise and fall of all the different social media networks, the opportunity of designing novel mechanism design or kind of like a mini macroeconomic financial layer on top of social media has been there forever. It has been tried forever. It kept failing. So I wonder if it really is the monetary layer or if it's just like for me honestly, like X is the only social network that has the potential to build something that would capture that. And there's like reasons for that: empty room problem, network effects, numbers of users and stuff like that. But I think X will become that place, and I think X will just very slowly, very incrementally. For example, they have their content creator payouts, right? Like the first step would just be like, okay, like now that's being paid out in maybe not USD on your bank account, maybe it's like something on chain, maybe it's Bitcoin. The tipping already exists. Perfect use case for crypto. I think like having crypto wallets natively associated with your Twitter account, just like you would put your email and your password, as like a very straightforward thing to do. That's nothing crazy. They could even abstract that with, hey, like if you don't have your own wallet and you don't know how it works, we just create something for you, but be aware that this is not super secure. We're custodying things for you, something like that. I feel like that's much more viable than any new network trying to vampire an Insta, TikTok, or X. And if you look at anyone that has done that, most recently TikTok, it's been not like a monetary thing. It's been a social or like a media thing. So I would bet on it's going to be a social or media thing again for new networks. And for crypto networks, I think it will happen on Twitter. That's my bet or guess.
on the note of financializing content, do you guys see any model where that makes sense? Because the current Zora model, I do not think is viable or attractive, neither
Yeah,
for content creators nor for content consumers, because to me, it does not make any sense to create an individual token for every single piece of content. Like it would make sense to have a token that is tied to a content creator, so you can kind of bet on the holistic development or like value accrual of one creator and his content. And the other model that would make sense is to have a token tied to an individual theme or like a certain meme that is being used in different contexts. Like if you have the Coldplay meme, for example, if you have like one Coldplay kiss cam token, and whenever that Coldplay meme is used in whatever contexts and like people like mint it as an NFT or do whatever with it, big brands use it, then value accrues to that token. But to have a token that is just tied to one post doesn't make any sense to me at all.
I think we are too deep in the weeds, and like again, I fully agree. That's also what I just said before. But I actually think it's more valuable for us to ignore the implementation details. Because like think of it this way. If under the hood a token is created, but it's never visible to the user, and it has some mechanism to capture some value, which then lands as USDC on some user's wallet, it doesn't really matter whether a token is created or not, right? I do agree the current design just feels wrong. But what the conversation that I think is more important is it meaningful and logical for content, or like especially social user generated content, to have value, capture value, generate value, distribute value, and if so, and then we can a little bit discuss about the how. And that to me is like a clear yes. Like, Facebook, Instagram, those platforms have been stealing user content forever and have been monetizing user content forever. And I think they're cancer for society. And I think having a newer system where if you generate content, you own it and you are responsible for it. It goes both ways, right? Like if you produce shit, you're also liable for it. But like if it goes viral and if it's great, then you should also benefit from it. I think that to me makes, of course it makes sense. Like, of course it makes sense. What does not make sense about that? Like, I don't know. Like, it's all about attention. It's all about eyeballs. Like, if you get eyeballs from millions of users looking in their phone, looking in their screen into something that you generated, that enables opportunity. Like that gives you the opportunity to get their attention for some amount of seconds or minutes, and that is worth something. Now, how exactly that's being monetized, I have no idea, right? That's like the hardest part. But I do think that's worth something.
No, I fully agree here. Maybe not in a year or two, but if we think the whole AI automated robot economy to its logical conclusion, the only non-scalable and truly scarce resources in the future are going to be one, Bitcoin, second, physical land, and third, human attention. These are the only three things that are worth competing over, with basically an infinite willingness to pay for, because these are the only things that are truly scarce. If we are able to provide energy more efficiently, that is like a very elastic supply function. We should be able to do that with solar and with nuclear. We literally have like an infinite energy glitch. If we then think this further, we are able to supply more and more computing power. So most of like white collar human labor is going to become pretty abundant. That is going to be like an elastic supply function too. If it comes to like physical service jobs, think about like haircutters, think about agriculture. This is not going to disappear completely within the next decade, but obviously more and more of that stuff is going to be automated. So at least you have increases of efficiency there. You can kind of extend this argument for the whole attention economy, because while attention in its totality of time obviously doesn't scale, you can try to tap into attention more efficiently by just decreasing the average attention span of a human. If you have an attention span of a couple of hours per medium per impression a couple of decades ago, you could maybe feed somebody with like a few impressions a day. If this attention span is collapsing down to a few seconds per impression, you can feed people hundreds, if not thousands of ads, impressions, whatever, digital media every single day. So it does scale to a certain extent, but it is, in its essence, it is still a very, very naturally scarce resource. So yeah, if everything else becomes commoditized, attention is going to be a very valuable resource. Like that is going to be financialized and monetized 100% of the time.
Agreed.
Nice. What's your guys' market outlook for August and September? Are we going any lower? Have you bought anything over the weekend?
I haven't bought. I'm just actually waiting and chilling and seeing and waiting what's next.
Situation monitoring.
Exactly. Just to also like bring this into the equation, since we talked super slightly about Ethereum mainnet, there's also the Fusaka airdrop, the Fusaka upgrade. It is around the corner. It's targeted for November, so maybe the buzz around Ethereum and ETH will increase slightly throughout the next couple of weeks and months. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a small ETH comeback since it underperformed throughout the past 2 years, and Solana grew significantly, so wouldn't surprise me to see ETH on the forefront a little bit more compared to the last couple of months. Not saying that we see this totally melt faces, ETH going to 10K. I would be very surprised about that, but some sort of traction again, and making sure that people don't lose hope.
How about you, Owner?
I'm not for a while already. I'm not doing any major moves or anything. I've been rebalancing earlier this year, which has turned out quite well. It was mainly like buying the ETH bottom when Eric Trump sold. Honestly, so the only disagreement I have with major sentiment is I think the music will stop earlier than people think. And I'm not bullish for next year. I'm rather careful. And
Can you specify earlier?
I mean, whenever I see like 26 something, I'm like, I don't think so. I think the music will stop before the end of the year, and this may even be in October or in September, right? Like it really depends. So again, I don't want to reason too much by analogy, but at least one time I'm going to do it now, which is basically peak bull market is 2 weeks of craziness. That can happen anytime. Like if it happens tomorrow for 2 weeks, I would probably sell after 2 weeks because like I'm looking for certain metrics. I'm looking for a random coin adding 10 billion in market cap in one day. I'm looking for unrealized profits ratios for, certain metrics being overheated. And if you look at the cycle in hindsight and you said, oh, we had like the late 2024 local top, and then we had the August cycle top, that would look perfectly normal. That would look like a perfectly normal cycle. There wouldn't be anything surprising about that. Maybe it would be a little bit early. Maybe it would be just in time. I don't know. What I don't think is... So long story short, I'm looking for those 2 weeks. And I really think it's 10 days to 2 weeks max. That being said, if I even see a single week of that, I would probably start selling and not look back. And everything would be in profit as I'm like well in profits even right now. So in that sense, I'm looking for certain metrics for some sort of like price action on certain assets. I don't have like a time thing, but I do feel like, I mean, to be honest, I felt that July will be a little bit wilder. I feel like
in August. We're in August
no.
already.
I felt like July
Okay.
would be a little bit crazier price action. I was not completely wrong with that, but I was more optimistic for July. I feel like it's shifted basically 1 month, my initial prediction. So now I feel like August will be some craziness, and then I feel like September would be my prediction for cycle top. And the reason I'm more conservative is every cycle out of the last 3-4 cycles, I tried to predict the top, and I was always like a few weeks too late. And I feel like now I'm consciously pushing myself to predict it earlier than what I feel like, just as like a precautionary mechanism from like my experience that I had over the last, I don't know, 7-8 years. So nothing wrong with the market. I think overall like things are okay. I want to say one thing though. I do think we will see another fart coin this cycle. So I do think that we're gonna see a coin that will go from zero few million market cap to $1 billion market cap within, honestly, like a week or something crazy like that. And that probably would mark the cycle top for me. Maybe like very close to the cycle top. That's my prediction. Like everything does not repeat, but everything happens faster. Like everything happens just like 2-3x faster than it happened the last time. If you look at Fartcoin, it was roughly a 90-day cycle, like the first cycle. I think now it's gonna happen in like 30 days, which is not quite a week, but you know, you get the idea. So yeah, that's my prediction. So quite bullish for the next 2 months, but I want to remind myself to
Sell earlier.
DCA out.
Yeah, I think it really resonates well with me. The only thing that just gut feeling is slightly smaller than your prediction. I would say December, January, something like that. But
Which is
overall
what
agree.
I think consensus CT is right now. Yeah.
But wouldn't be surprised if music stops in November as well. But
yeah,
I think
something like that, right? Like we have to see a proper. I mean, some people say, hey, like the 4-year cycle is over. I just don't believe that. I just don't believe that profits will not be realized this time because it's different. I mean, every cycle we had the same.
Yeah.
Every cycle we had the freaking
now
same.
it's different.
Now it's different. Bitcoin 100K, this, that. No, it's not going to be any different. I feel very strongly about it not going to be any different. In fact, this may be the last cycle as we know it, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to go down. I still think it will go down. And yes, maybe then we're not going to have another cycle in 2 or 3 years. Maybe then the dynamic changes. But that doesn't mean that this top is not going down, right? So
this time is not different, but then next time is going to be different. Well, I mean, I think on the cycle thing, like statistically, we have 2 observations of crypto cycles, and the macro circumstances for every single one of these have been pretty different each time. So I would say yes, statistically, it is an insignificant amount of observations. However, I do have a lot of sympathy for this more esoteric kind of, financial astrology cycle type of stuff. So like I would not discount it to zero. What I think is going to emerge as the consensus narrative, I do not think it is consensus right now, because I still think consensus is that we are going to peak sometime during October to November. However, given the kind of playbook of the cycle so far has always been around 3 to 4 weeks of altcoin upwards price action. The last 1 to 2 weeks of them have the only 2 weeks that are even somewhat similar to euphoria and optimism. And then it's just a slow bleed down over a month, 2 months, and 3 months, sometimes even longer than that. And this is just going to get people very tired, very exhausted of this cycle. And the most painful path forward would just to continue the slow but consistent grind up of BTC to 130, 140, 150. Maybe there's a week or two where it makes a couple of 5K or 10K green candles, and then it's just consolidating again over 2 months, where in the first week, alts are outperforming like crazy, and then alts are going to top 2 and just like give back most of their gains that they have made. So that would be the most painful path forward. And I think if that is going to continue, then the consensus is going to be we will peak sometime during January, February, March 2026. And just to recap our bet we have made last week, where we bet on BTCD, you were the one who wanted to extend the deadline until the end of Q1 2026, not me. So
no, I just said it's gonna be impossible to predict whether something was the cycle top or not just because of a downwards movement until waiting it out. So what if I'm right in the short term and things go down after September and I cash in the money or whatever we bet on, but then in January we have another God candle and there's another all-time high. You know, like then that's what I mean. Like,
well, yeah, then you've been right directionally, but your timing was wrong. But you were the one who wanted to set the deadline at the end of Q1. So like you want to give yourself a bit of comfort buffer.
no, I want to give you comfort buffer.
No,
That's what I just explained.
For me, the odds, like BTCD is sitting at 61.9% right now. If you only have time to extend BTCD down to 40% until fall of this year, the odds of me winning this bet is much more likely than if you have time until the end of Q1 2026 to just wick below 40%.
That's not what I mean. Then you misunderstood what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is my prediction is September, October still. Mainly September, which I know is very definitely earlier than anything I've been hearing from others, right?
Yeah, fully agree.
And that doesn't change. That's documented for the public basically. However, we do the books in end of Q1 next year. Because only then I think will we be able to assess what has happened. As opposed that's the only point. I wouldn't do it by the end of the year because there is a scenario which would be in your favor that in the short term after September maybe things have been down 50%, but then early next year they still reach an all-time high, which would mean that you were right. That was my point. So I'm not giving myself more time. I'm just saying.
Then the whole BTC up, all bleeding down, then essentially the entire playbook we've seen in the cycle so far, that would have to continue for me to be right until the end of Q1 in 2026. If we see the kind of alt exuberance in early to mid-September or October the latest, then that is much more playing towards your...
Wait, I feel like this is too complicated. When do you think there will be the cycle top?
I don't know. I do not make it dependent on any timing. I make it dependent on price action. Just as you said, if we see a week or two of some crazy candles and newly launched coins, particularly meme coins.
I mean, that's the only scenario. That's the only scenario where I would change my mind. The only scenario where I would change my mind. First of all, I think putting a fixed date just doesn't make any sense. Because of what we discussed, right? My intuition, if I have to pick something, is September, October. But let's say it's December, everything went sideways. As of today, I probably wouldn't think it's over. I would probably think, okay, that's weird. I don't know what that is. I haven't seen it before. I need to draw new conclusions. However, even if we see just a Bitcoin all-time high, 200K in September, October, 130K max, let's say, which is nothing crazy. And then it's going down consistently without this, let's say, 2 weeks crazy parabola that I was just talking about. Then I would probably still say, yeah, that was probably it. I can make that statement. Anyways, let's just I mean, I don't care too much about the bet, to be honest. It was just a dinner anyway, so happy to pay for it regardless. It's just let's just keep talking about it and observing the market and see if any of the signals we're discussing here, if we're seeing them or sensing them, and if we can kind of make predictions closer to when that happens. I'm hoping for crazy candles and parabola because then I would be very comfortable making top predictions.
Yeah. No,
sounds good.
I agree.
Maybe in the next episode we can also discuss how low can we go. Maybe on the
that's a good topic. Yeah, I heard you have to go, Yuri. So yeah, maybe Owner and I, we can discuss it out for the last 5 minutes. But yeah, was great having you on, and see you next week.
Pleasure as always. See you next week, guys.
Ciao.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of indicators we were looking at, we discussed these last week or a week and a half ago. On the on-chain side of things, 0 out of the 30 indicators have hit any of the red zones yet. We both agreed that not all 30 of them have to hit for the cycle to be over, but I think we can be pretty clear that we have not reached bubble territory on the retail side of things. And then if you look at retail indicators that are not directly crypto related, but somewhat correlated, for example, the gray market price discrepancy for Rolexes. If you look at housing demand in Miami, in LA for luxury mansions, whatever these new rich people want to spend their money on, new registrations for Lamborghinis, none of that stuff has hit any of the highs that we have seen in 2021. And I am not of the opinion that the cycle has to be exactly the same in terms of retail exuberance, but we have not even come close to this. Also on the treasury company side of things, on the TradFi side of things, like we are just in the beginning phases of building out the infrastructure for a proper financial macro bubble for crypto as an entire industry. Like we are just in like the enabling stage of having enough rails for capital flow, of having enough infrastructure to facilitate a crypto bubble that would rival the dot-com bubble of 1999 until 2001. I do not think that 2021 was the macro top in terms of retail never coming back to crypto. I find that very unlikely. Not necessarily because the crypto industry and like the applications building right now are improving by 10x. We are improving, no doubt about that, but it is not going to be the only driver. The other main side of the same coin is that people just do not have any other asset classes to allocate into. It is very obvious that regardless where you look in the West, in terms of governments, their fiat currencies are getting devalued into infinity. Government deficits are beyond any point of return. Like you cannot fix this crisis. The denominator is going towards zero. Government bonds are as unattractive as ever. Like you do not have any other way to outgrow inflation than by allocating into risk assets. And equities have already been running high for the last 2 years. Right now, they're looking a little toppy for the first time since the strong run up in the beginning of April. What else do you want to buy? Like, if I was to freely allocate, maybe I would want to allocate into robotics and into nuclear energy. But I mean, robotics is even more like futuristic
It's
and
very
less
gated.
predictable than crypto. And like it's very hard to get exposure to that as like as an average investor. If we are looking towards energy, I mean, solar is still running on a lot of subsidies, so you have like a lot of financing risk there. With nuclear, I think that would be a hugely asymmetric bet, but you can't just like start building up a nuclear plant. It's regulated to death, so you cannot get proper exposure to that stuff as well. AI is somewhat similar. OpenAI, you cannot get any public exposure, so I think crypto is going to be the main vertical going forward if you just want to bet on like innovation in new economic mechanisms, in financialization, and just in frontier tech.
I agree with that. I think one thing we didn't discuss enough is crypto makes this accessible, and anything else like robotics is so gated. Like, how is the average person going to get access and exposure to robotics pre-IPO? It's irregulated, it's impossible. 99% of the cases, that's probably a good thing as it protects the citizen. But again, like for risk savvier people and users, crypto is, I think, the venue to experiment with that. But
Also, it's
anyways,
easier to
yeah.
understand because I mean, the educational content about crypto and the whole UX still has like orders of magnitude to improve. But like, how as an like average IQ retail market participant do you want to understand robotics and like what company to allocate?
I was even referring to a future robotics project being tokenized very early and giving people access, as opposed to a Silicon Valley VC funded company IPOing in 8 years from now and you buying it 32 billion market cap. So, obviously 99.9% of the times the tokenized early robotics project will fail, and maybe only 98% of the time the Silicon Valley project will fail. But that was what I was referring to. I think crypto, and at the end of the day, is just technology that allows us to price things. Attention, relevance, technology, whatever we want to price. Our time. And it makes something that is normally not or very hard accessible more accessible, I think. But anyways, we're at the hour, Max, which is, I think, the signal for us to wrap up. This was a fun one. I like this one a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Yuri. He was like in between our lines of fire, I feel like. But
yeah, I think Yuri is always taking like the middle position between us two, the mediating voice.
Nice, man. Was a blast. Thank you.
All right. See you next week.
Speak soon. Ciao, ciao.